Gotta get to my intro. Let's see here. Alright, it's gotta be this way. Oh, fuck.
Never felt better.
Well, that was embarrassing. Thank Carl no one saw that. Sorry I'm a little late. Anyway, hey everybody, Drilling in the Name of here, and wow, we're already at the 1-year anniversary of this channel. That's right, it has been 1 whole year since I made a very highbrow and topical meme that I posted to the Deep Rock subreddit that resulted in me making my first YouTube video and starting this channel. And it also happens to be the 4-year anniversary of Deep Rock Galactic. With all this anniversary talk, I figured I should probably have an anniversary beer. This is the Anniversary Bourbon County Stout, which was aged 2 years in Weller 12 barrels. Hope it's better than that birthday stout I had a little while back. Ooh. Anyway, I figured what better way to celebrate my first year on YouTube than to make a huge,
Mega epic
comprehensive guide to the reinforced power drills. The power drills are really what drew me to my main class in the first place, and I still don't think there's a better all-around tool in the game. Let me explain. Let's look at the 4 traversal tools of DRG in a Venn diagram consisting of 3 categories: fun, versatility, and utility. In terms of fun, I think that no doubt describes the Scout's grappling hook. It's just a pure joy to use, but it doesn't really offer much in the way of versatility or utility because it really only does one thing and it can't be used by the rest of the team. As for the traversal tool that best embodies versatility, I think that award easily goes to the Engineer's platform gun. It can be used to accomplish a wide variety of tasks, from cave traversal, crowd control, and cover from enemy fire. However, I wouldn't really describe it as fun. And when it comes to pure utility, I think that definitely describes the Gunner's zipline launcher. It's extremely straightforward and great at getting the entire team from point A to point B. But slowly climbing a zipline isn't very fun, and it doesn't really offer much in the way of versatility. But if you want something that encompasses all of these qualities, look no further than the Driller's reinforced power drills. Now these are obviously fun, because destroying things is rarely ever not fun. They're extremely versatile in the ways they can help traverse the cave and transform the terrain, and what's more useful when digging through dirt than a pair of high-powered drills? Not to mention they are also the only traversal tool that can be used as a weapon. Now I wanted this video to have something for everybody, whether you're 500 hours in or just getting started. There is a lot of information to get to, so I've separated this video into 4 categories: the best drill loadout, the basics, terraforming, and combat. There are chapters for each down below, so if you're familiar with the drills and want to skip the beginner stuff, feel free to do so. In any case, let's get started with the loadout. I've already gone over the first tier in my Hardened drill tips versus Barbed drills video, so I'm not going to spend time trying to relitigate that here. If you haven't seen that video, take a moment to check it out as I fully explain my reasoning for taking Barbed drills in tier 1. As for tier 2, we have a choice between magnetic refrigeration and streamlined integrity check. The first gives you a +1 to your cooling rate, and the second reduces your overheat time by 3 seconds. My advice here would be to take streamlined integrity check if you're new to the drills, as you're bound to overheat a few times as you get used to them. 8 seconds is a pretty long time to get them restarted if you're drilling to the dropship or drilling away from enemies, so I think taking the reduced penalty is really helpful for beginners. But once you get a feel for them, I definitely recommend switching to magnetic refrigeration, especially if you pulse your drills. This is when you use your drills in short bursts, which benefits greatly from the added cooling rate. Tier 3 is obviously a no-brainer since there's only one option. And in Tier 4, we have increased tank pressure and bloody cold drills. The former gets you an extra 6 liters of fuel, while the latter cools your drills while using them in combat. Bloody cold drills is a really powerful mod. As long as you are damaging enemies while using your drills, it actually removes heat faster than the drills generate heat. Meaning you could continuously drill until you run out of fuel as long as your drills are contacting bugs. But as nice as this is with the added damage of barbed drills, I find this often causes me to overuse my drills and run out of fuel more often, so I recommend taking the added 6 liters in tier 4. Now that we have our drills set up, let's move on to the basics. So for starters, the drills have 2 modes. The default mode is mining, with the secondary mode being combat, which I'll get into later. In either mode, your drills will heat up while in use. This is displayed as a percentage on your right drill, and when that reaches 100%, your drills will overheat. Your drills gain 1 heat per second while in use, and they lose 2 heat per second while not in use. So they cool off twice as fast as they heat as a baseline stat, but if you're using magnetic refrigeration, they cool 3 times as fast, which is why that mod is so beneficial for keeping your drills running. Now in terms of fuel consumption, that actually differs depending on which mode your drills are in. While mining with no upgrades, your drills consume 1/4 of a liter per tick at 1.5 ticks per second. However, since we took supercharged motor, which increases our mining rate by 0.75, we're consuming 1/4 of a liter at 2.25 ticks per second, or 9/16 of a liter per second. Combat mode, on the other hand, requires more fuel. When being used on enemies, your drills will consume 0.2 liters per tick at 8 ticks per second, or 1.6 liters of fuel per second. And this isn't affected by any drill mods. This is why the extra damage with barbed drills is so important if you plan on using your drills as a weapon. Now let's get into digging. When you dig straight into terrain, your drills create a space that is 2 meters wide, 2.2 meters tall, and for each terrain break, 1 meter deep. Keep that width in mind because that will be important later. The first time you'll probably make good use of this is drilling through a patch of compacted dirt. If you check your terrain scanner, you should be able to rotate around and see the nearby connecting tunnel. What's really nice about this is that once you're facing the direction you need to go, you can hit the jump key to orient your dwarf to face that direction. Another common use is basic traversal. Here you can see I'm drilling upwards to reach a mission objective. And it obviously works just as well when you need to get down from up high. Just watch that edge so you don't fall. The nice thing about either of these is you're left with a path to get back up or down should you need to backtrack. By now you might be thinking, if my drills have a mining mode, shouldn't I be using them to mine? But unfortunately, they don't work directly on veins of minerals. You can drill behind a vein and destroy all the terrain it's touching to instantly mine the entire vein, but it's often not that easy and can really waste a lot of fuel. However, this concept does have useful applications. There are certain minerals that appear in stalagmite formations like this umanite here. Destroying the terrain around the base will mine the entire stalagmite. This also works on red sugar, which can really come in handy if you're scrambling for some quick health. But when it comes to veins of minerals, I prefer to just drill up behind them and use my pickaxe. You'll also encounter larger minerals buried in the terrain. These appear as crystal formations on the surface, so you know where to dig. Obviously, the drills make this a much easier task. This of course applies to eggs and a quark as well. Speaking of drilling two things, you'll sometimes come across minerals or secondary mission objectives that are in tough spots. In these situations, the waypoint really comes in handy. Simply point your laser pointer where you want to go and hit the use key to set your waypoint. This will remain where it is until you set a new waypoint. When drilling, pull out your laser pointer to display the waypoint icon so you can keep track of the direction you need to go. If you lose track of it, you can also pull up your terrain scanner where it appears as this dark blue icon, and as I mentioned before, you can hit the jump key to orient yourself in the correct direction. This really is worth becoming proficient at, because you may not always have a scout-engineer combo to reach difficult items. Speaking of secondary mission objectives, the drills make it really easy to crack open those ebenuts. But you can definitely use the drills to dig to things other than minerals. The first time I really got a sense of the freedom in this game was when Dr. Repulsive and I were scrambling through a cave to get to the dropship, and I thought to myself, I wonder if I could just drill there. It was one of those really rewarding lightbulb moments in this game where I realized the value of the developers kind of letting you figure certain things out for yourself. Anyway, when it comes to drilling to the dropship, I'll admit that I don't have a really scientific way of going about it. I guess if I had to pin it down, I'd say if I'm within 130 meters of the dropship and I have at least 30 liters of fuel, I'll dig there. This looks like a great situation to drill all the way to the dropship without resurfacing. I have a nearly full fuel tank and an uninterrupted path to the dropship. If you're playing with a team, be sure to ping the entrance when you start drilling. This strategy definitely works better with other players so that you have someone to watch your back while you drill. Check your terrain scanner often, both to keep an eye on your trajectory and to make sure you aren't cutting into any nearby tunnels. Once I'm on the ship, I can check my terrain scanner to show that I've tunneled all the way from the final room to the dropship. In this situation, I didn't have as much fuel at the end, so I'm going to pop up into a room to cut my drill distance. But if you still find yourself cutting it close on fuel by the end, don't forget you can always use a satchel charge to get you that last chunk of the way. Just make sure your fellow dwarves are clear of the blast radius. Something I find really helpful when drilling long distances like this is to count the terrain breaks. With our current loadout, we can drill up to 11 terrain breaks before overheating. This really allows you to concentrate on the task at hand rather than having to keep your eye on the heat meter. Lastly, don't forget about fallen teammates. Their outline will appear through terrain, which makes it easy to locate and drill to them. You'll know you're close when you see this orange glow, and just to be safe, you should probably satchel them in case there's still enemies on their body. Plus, it's just more fun that way. Now to get into some more advanced techniques, let's talk about terraforming. When I first started playing Deep Rock, I was fortunate enough to play with a lot of helpful veterans. However, I didn't always know what they were talking about. Early on, I was in a mission where someone kept telling me to terraform, and I remember thinking, what? So after that mission, I grabbed my trusty Standard Dictionary of Facts to see what they meant. It defines to terraform as to transform a planet so as to resemble the Earth, especially so that it can support dwarven life, which is oddly specific and related. With regard to Deep Rock, what this basically means is get shit out of the way. There are tons of natural obstacles within the caves of Hoxie's, some of which work to your benefit and some not. And when dealing with the latter, your drills are your best friend. The main reason for clearing terrain is to create better sightlines for your team. The less stuff in the way, all the better to see and shoot your enemies with, my dwarf. And when it comes to larger formations, all you have to do is drill any portion that is touching terrain to destroy the entire structure. Here's a good example of clearing sightlines in practice. As you can see, there are a lot of natural formations around this uplink. We can start by destroying all of the smaller crystals. This is also a great time to use the drill's angle meter. If your drills are pointed straight ahead at 0 degrees, you'll dig parallel to the ground. What this does is leave you with a nice flat surface. Finally, we can remove this large structure. First, I dig out the base. Then I use the EPC with TCF to destroy the terrain sections connecting each side. Because this leaves it with no connecting terrain, the entire thing is destroyed. And this is what we are left with. You can see here in the before and after what a dramatic improvement this is. And when the enemies arrive, you can see exactly where they're coming from and have no obstacles to block your line of fire. Let's take a look at the different ways this impacts specific mission types. A fairly obvious one would be the benefit of the reinforced power drills in a refinery mission. Once a pump jack is called, you can use your laser pointer to see where it is on the map. Pump jacks outlined in white have a pipe connected already, and blue pump jacks still need a pipe built. Now obviously the most efficient pipe is a straight line from the refinery to the pump jack, which is where your drills come in. Unfortunately, a straight line isn't always easy to accomplish. Here you can see we have a large gap where our pipe needs to go. However, there are ways to make this work without an engineer's platforms. I use my drills to traverse across and create a path for myself, and then dig out a landing spot for the pipeline. You can see the pump jack is right behind here, which makes this worth the effort. Thankfully, you can grab onto a pipe section and drag it further than it can reach so that I can get back around and place it in the spot that I dug out. And now our pipe is good to go. And by the way, if you make a mistake laying a pipe section, just use your drills to quickly destroy it. In a salvage operation, the drills can take on a less apparent but equally important role. Now the obvious application in a salvage operation is to use your drills to quickly snap up all the mule legs you need. But the uplink and fuel cell portions are really where the drills can play a huge role. Take this uplink for example. It's pressed right up against a wall, which means enemies can crawl down right on top of your head, and your team only has half the possible area to defend. Let's remedy this. I'll start by clearing these crystals out of the way. Next, you're going to want to clear out some space behind the uplink. Start by shaving out a curved path behind it, making sure to cut as far into the wall as possible without actually going inside the wall. We'll call this first section Layer 1, and if you remember from earlier, this should be about 2 meters wide. Next, you want to deepen this area by drilling back along the same path. With the addition of Layer 2, this should leave us with a space about 4 meters deep. Lastly, drill back along those 2 layers, this time with your drills pointed straight up. To show you why, I've drilled 2 sections into this wall, one with my drills pointing forward and one with the added section with my drills pointing up. The reason for this is you get about 3 meters of extra room above your head.
This is important because bugs are going to be coming down from above you and you really don't want them right in your face when they crawl around the edge. And the same thing applies if you're defending an area with a steep drop-off.
After you go back along the second layer, this is what you're left with. And if you're OCD like me, you can take a second to clean up some of the edges. As I mentioned a moment ago, it's not a bad idea to smooth out any ledges so you can have the clearest line of sight. Finally, your engineer can stagger some platforms across the top to force the bugs into smaller areas of your choosing, and now we can repair. Once the triangulation zone appears, you can see what all of this accomplishes. The zone perfectly fits the shape we carved because the radius is 5 meters from the uplink. All of this maximizes the area we can fight in while giving us some cover to defend from. And of course, you can do the same thing with the fuel cell. However, sometimes it'll land in a less than ideal spot. It's no good up here because enemies can pretty much attack from all sides, so I'm going to knock it down to the ground. You can use your drills, but I'm going to be lazy and satchel it. As you can see, it's still in a pretty terrible spot, so I'm going to take it down another level still. Now, you could certainly do all the steps we just did, but it's still in a pretty awkward position, which calls for a different strategy.
And now I'll begin my 2-hour symposium on the bunker strategy.
Just kidding. Check out my Under Bunkie tutorial from a year ago if you want the finer details on this strategy. Long story short, highlight the fuel cell, dig underneath the surface, and make a small room directly beneath the fuel cell. Once the fuel cell is prepared, hop back in and defend that bunkie. And after the drop pod powers up, simply drill up to the ship.
Your drills can also come in handy during elimination missions.
A simple way to give yourself some cover when fighting a dreadnought is to drill short tunnels around the room. I typically make them fairly close to each other so I can easily jump from one to the next. These give you tight areas of cover to pop in and out of, and the dreads typically just path around them. And don't forget to drill their butts! However, if you come across a dread room like this, it's actually better to not terraform and leave these pillars in place. These smaller formations are easy for you to maneuver around, but they'll block a lot of projectile attacks and slow the movement of the dreads.
And when it comes to escort duty, there are definitely some good uses for the drills.
One strategy some people like to use is to drill ahead. Before you get Doretta started, you can use the terrain scanner to drill into the next room to give yourself a head start on any potential hazards like cave leeches or spitballers. You can do this again before restarting after a refuel, either to get the lay of the land or to collect minerals in between swarms. This certainly can be effective, though I will admit I'm personally not much of a fan. Once you reach the Heartstone, you may have teammates that like to destroy these structures for the sake of sightlines, but I like to leave one for easy access to the top of the Heartstone. During the second segment of the fight, you can use your drills on the flying rocks, but only if they are within range. Holding your drills over your head will not stop a rock if it starts its descent out of the range of your drills. They are great in the final stage of the battle as they do make quick work of the Amaran beamers.
Lastly, there is industrial sabotage. As a driller, at least on the higher haz levels, these can be a little frustrating because none of your primaries are particularly great against the bots.
But when it comes to the turrets, nothing beats the power drills. Just highlight a turret with your laser pointer and dig to its root, which instantly destroys it. You can use this to take out an entire cluster of turrets without threat of taking any damage. And of course, when setting up the nodes, it's easiest to just drill straight to the hacking pod.
Flares
We have connection. Hacking pod online. Begin the hacking when you're ready.
And as for the final battle against the Caretaker, we can employ the same strategy from the previous Dreadnought section and create a series of short tunnels that we can duck in and out of.
The drills also serve a role in certain machine events, especially with a tritolite deposit.
The first thing you want to do is locate the bomb dispenser and dig a tunnel directly to it. If you have a gunner with you, they should fire a zipline from the dispenser to the tritolite, ideally somewhere nearby or back through the tunnel if it's the only path back. This creates an efficient loop where you take the zipline down with a bomb in hand and run back to the dispenser through the tunnel. As for the Omen, it's really helpful to dig trenches in between the platforms. These provide protection from the radial pulse gun, twin slicer, and heavy burster. Just look out for those drones. As for the Ebonite mutation, you'll want to leave the natural barriers where they are. These will help catch the pickaxe charge canisters so they don't get too far away during the event. As for the Ebonite glyphids themselves, the drills are the only weapon that will work on them besides the pickaxe.
Now that we have the interactions with drills in the terrain out of the way, it's time to talk combat. Now, as I mentioned in my Hardened Drill Tips vs. Barbed Drills video, I initially didn't see much of a need to use my drills for combat. But since learning how those mods actually work and using barbed drills pretty much exclusively since then, I now see the tremendous value of using the drills as an additional weapon. Now, I'm sure there's plenty of you that still don't see any point in doing physical damage with the drills, so let me take you through a really common scenario where they really save the day.
So you get out of the dropship and you see a big cloud of jellies. You get scared, so you hop back in, and then the dropship takes off, as it usually does. Unfortunately, Mission Control hasn't seemed to have noticed that you're still inside the ship. You want to get a feel for where you are, so you go to check your terrain scanner, but then immediately drop through the bottom of the ship and fall to your death. Now, we've all been here before, so you know exactly how to get out of this situation. You iron will, freeze some nearby enemies, and use your drills to get enough health to get away. You activate your dash to create some distance between you and the enemies, and hopefully find some nearby health to bring yourself back up to full. By now, the jellies are starting to catch up, but instead of using a traditional weapon on them, just pull out your drills and grind them out of the sky. And now that you've gotten yourself into a better position, you can use the driller's entire arsenal to clear some of this initial wave.
Explosives, spikes! That's all you got!
By now, the Praetorians have finally arrived. Thankfully, you can simply jump on their backs to avoid taking any damage, and use the drills to strip away all of their armor. This obviously makes them a lot easier to finish off in whichever way you choose. And you can go and do the exact same thing to this guy. And by the time he's down, we're in pretty good shape and I guess ready to start the mission.
Now obviously there was a lot going on there, so we're going to go through each of the key mod and perk combinations one by one. For starters, there's the all-important Iron Will Vampire Barbed Drills combo. If you're not familiar with Iron Will, once you go down, this gives you a last stand of up to 12 seconds with the perk maxed out. You'll go back down after this period unless you get some health. This pairs really well with the Vampire perk, which rewards you with up to 5 health with the perk maxed out for each melee kill of a medium or larger enemy. Now the drills are recorded as melee damage, and you're immune during the last stand period, so if you're using barbed drills for the double melee damage bonus, this is a really great way to revive yourself after going down.
It's even easier if you're a cryo driller, as frozen bugs will take 3 times more damage, so your drills are doing 30 damage as opposed to the base 5. Here you can see how easily I'm able to kill a couple guards to get some health and successfully revive, and then I use Dash to create some space.
Dash is a really powerful perk that I was skeptical about at first, but now use for every class except Scout. Dash more than doubles your speed for 1.5 seconds and eliminates all slows except for electricity and stun. What's really nice is with the perk maxed out, it has a very short 25-second cooldown, which means that you can use it often and throughout an entire mission.
Next I use the drills to easily take care of a cloud of jellies. This also works on shredders, which really trivializes these otherwise obnoxious enemies. They also stop the projectiles from spitballers and Corlock sprouts. Just make sure you don't try this with Trijaws or Acid Spitters. The drills do have other non-conventional combat uses. They work great when caught off guard by a cave leech, holding hoolie hoarders in place, and they can do a ton of close quarters damage against a Betsy. I know I died and had to Iron Will here, but you can see the drills do massive damage, and ideally I'd have a few other teammates helping me finish it off. In this next portion, we can see Fear at work. The drills apply a 50% base fear chance, meaning enemies have a 50-50 chance of fleeing the area while taking damage from them. And you can see here there are multiple guards and slashers leaving the fray as a result. From there, I use everything in my arsenal. I use a satchel to take out a chunk of frozen enemies, then a mix of cryo, power attack, impact axe, and EPC to eliminate the remaining grunts and slashers. Finally, I take advantage of the ridiculous armor-breaking capabilities of my drills to finish off the Praetorians.
I think what this clip really shows about combat is that more than any other class, the driller really is the sum of his parts. This is also why I don't spec anything for the driller specifically for damage. Everything at the driller's disposal can be used in conjunction at any point during the fight. To put it simply, no other class can fight with their primary weapon, secondary weapon, traversal tool, and utility tool. In fact, the only other traversal tool or utility tool that does damage at all is the engineer's turret, unless you count the scout's flare gun, which... Lights up! You know. I think this turns what could have been the mindless Destructo class into a much more interesting and complex character, and really solidifies the driller as my favorite dwarf. Lastly, I want to finish up with a few miscellaneous tips and tricks. First, a quick advantage of the drills in the magma core.
Destroying the terrain here reveals hot rock which will damage you, but the drills are able to safely cut through the terrain.
Next, let's talk about the Crassus detonator. These are bulk detonators that are covered in gold and have a 3% chance of spawning in any given mission. They explode in the same way as a regular bulk, but the crater they leave behind is covered in a layer of gold. Now obviously the amount of gold they leave behind depends on the amount of terrain surrounding the Crassus when it dies.
Doing this out in the open won't leave you with much because there's less terrain for it to impact.
This is where the drills come in.
Get the Crassus to follow you and start digging a tunnel. Again, make sure to ping so your teammates know where to go, and make sure they're able to get in with you. It'll start digging to you, and once it's completely inside the tunnel, detonate it, however you choose. And now you can see how this maxes out the surface area of the explosion. From here you can mine the gold in a number of ways. EPC with TCF, drill around and pickaxe, or just blow it out of the ceiling. However, if your team has pots of gold, make sure to only use your pickaxe, otherwise the gold bonus won't apply.
Now we talked earlier about drilling down fuel cells, but this works on other large objects as well.
Rather than trying to haul this battery all the way up here, simply drill the cargo crate down. You can do this with the mini mules, and resupplies as well. Just make sure you're not underneath it.
Now I know I often talk about things in relation to team dynamics, so let's look at how to get creative with our drills for you solo drillers out there.
If you need to get something really high up, you don't necessarily need to drill all the way up a wall. Try making a staircase out of a natural formation instead. Point your drills just above 45 degrees and drill one terrain break at a time while jumping. You'll slowly and safely pull yourself up. This is especially handy for things you can't TCF, like that yeast cone up there.
Attracting the bugs. Hold the line while the pump sequence continues.
I was even able to drill out the middle of the structure on the way down to snag that vein of gold. Another tactic for drilling vertically is the spiral staircase. Like I just described, aim just above 45 degrees and jump as you drill, but this time, slowly turn to the left or right as you do so. This will take you upwards very quickly and leave a nice spiral path you can take back down. Using dash can also help with solo cave traversal. You can use it to clear large gaps and use your drills to catch yourself on the other side. You can also use this to jump around large corners, and even with barbed drills, you're able to dig into the wall to catch yourself. You can also use the drills to infinity and beyond in fall with style.
Finally, we have the ever-elusive drill save. Now, I have done dozens and dozens of experiments with this. I have tried hardened drill tips, barbed drills, drilling with my drills down, drilling with my drills forward, drilling before I hit the ground, drilling as I hit the ground. But every once in a while, you are miraculously able to drill into the ground to save yourself from a large fall. If anyone has any tips, please let me know in the comments because it would be huge to be able to do this reliably. Well, that's going to do it for my comprehensive guide to the reinforced power drills. I hope you learned something you didn't know and had a few laughs along the way. As of this recording, I'm up to nearly 6,000 subscribers, which, no lie, is nearly 6,000 more than I ever expected to have. The response to this channel has been so overwhelmingly positive, and I truly can't thank you enough. Up next, and back by popular demand, MusNothus will be sharing his Scout Mobility Guide, which I'll be uploading next week. Now this is a DuelTorial, so once you've all had a chance to see both videos, I'll be putting up a community poll. Now I don't want you to vote on which traversal tool you prefer or whose video you enjoyed more. I want you to vote based on the merits of the arguments we make for our respective traversal tools. The winner will get to choose the loser's cosmetics for a month, and the loser will have to buy the winner a beer, and perform a different kind of escort duty. Well, my beer is empty. I think it's time for me to hit the bar. You're the best, Lloyd. Cheers, everybody. Rock and stone. Lloyd, I gotta tell ya, this is a shitload of work. I gotta go play some Elden Ring.